News and Blues. I'm Rob. Well, I hope you saw the last show where I played the first half of a lecture, or rather a presentation by Dane Wiggington, who is a longtime researcher of chemtrails, or geoengineering, as the official name is, and it does have an official name. And you can go and look at the public documents, patents. It's been admitted, and they're spraying today, Thursday, the 27th of March, as I record this. I saw where they had been spraying their usual, probably aluminum, barium, strontium, among other things. There have been found pathogenic blood cells, all kinds of toxic stuff has been found in these chemtrails. So that's coming up, the second half, the conclusion of that Dane Wiggington's talk entitled Geoengineering, the Collapse of Civilization, or the Collapse of Earth's Ecosystem, something in that effect. But before I do, of course, I have to, well, maybe I should apologize for getting so angry the last time. I don't know. It seems to work for Alex Jones, my favorite blowhard in the alternative media. He seemed to be selling lots of T-shirts and things. He just screams. But the funny thing about him is a good likelihood that he's a Judas goat, which is he draws people in and then his followers are tracked. And I mean, he's just getting too successful. So, you know, I do bring you one clip today from InfoWars. In fact, they do a good job of gathering news and presenting it. Except for him, you know, he's a real turnoff lately anymore. He's just so literally. Why do people say that? Literally means literally, not figuratively. There's figuratively, then literally. Like, you know, saying literally and then saying a metaphor after it is just doesn't make any sense. Lately he's been they literally dropped a bomb on him. Literally, you know, when he means metaphorically. And it's another thing these talking heads, pundits, like on the authorities on the financial scene on MSNBC or CNBC. Well, at the end of the day, I think the returns on the stock market are going to be positive. At the end of the day, blah, blah, blah. Or the reality is, there's another one I can't stand. The reality is, you just can't beat the terrorists. The reality is, we're under attack by Islamic radical terrorists. And yeah, well, that's not my reality. My reality is I've discovered that the terrorist threat is largely a fiction. It's a very well-crafted fiction. But anyway, little local news, just idiocy on the news. For just for one of many things, it was they're debating welfare, right? And I'm sitting there, kind of watching it, and I'm listening. They're talking about some other guy in a suit gets up there and says, "What we need more training jobs, more training, so we'll have people will have the skills." Well, hello, I've been looking for a job for like 4 years now. Hey, it's 4 years. I can't remember long ago. It was 3 years that I've been looking for work. Anyways, I have a degree in electronics, and I got another degree in communications. I got 25 years in experience with IBM and some other companies. And you know what? I've got tons of skills. I've got a lot of skills. I went to college like 2 or 3 times, you know. And that's your answer? That's your answer? Train people? Waste more money? So, yeah, that's just stupid. Social engineering. The social engineering goes on in your TV shows and everywhere you go. The last time I was really charged up about the bullying thing and the Bossy. They had just come out with ban Bossy. Don't say the word bossy, you know. And that's a movement, you know. That's something to really get behind and put your energy behind. I mean, that really warrants a lot of energy into something like that. I mean, let's go for that, you know. Ban the word bossy. Just another example of social engineering and extreme political correctness, which is social engineering, slowly changing the culture, as they've done with undermining the culture with uh, constant bombardment with gay stereotypes, gay this, gay that. You know, I'm not homophobic, but gee whiz, I mean, come on, give it a rest, okay? No, they're not happy. You know, they've undermined the American family. They started the feminist movement, which put women to work. And so they doubled their tax revenue for the IRS, the illegal, unconstitutional IRS. And I wanted to get that film to show you, but I didn't hear an answer from the station managers. Apparently, they don't have time to air that. It's a film by Aaron Russo called "America: From Freedom to Fascism," and it'll show you the real truth about the IRS and the Federal Reserve, and what a crime has been perpetrated on Americans through that organization, the Federal Reserve, the private cartel of private bankers, criminals. Um, anyway, let me show you this. Another thing that, I keep my eye on is the police, and the police are slowly getting out of hand. And the reason you don't hear about it oftentimes, among everything else that's going on, why you don't hear about it. By now, if you watch my show, you know that the networks, the major media, are owned and controlled by these global elites, by the criminal, the central banking families, the elite families, the people running the world. And they've got names, and by now you can go on the internet and find them. And again, that's why they're trying to close down the internet, and why they killed Aaron Swartz and said it was a suicide. And Michael Hastings, his car blew up. And all the way back to Gary Webb, who blew the whistle on the CIA bringing drugs in. Oh, and then I saw another thing on Arrow, the show Arrow, where the guy, the comics character, come to life there, the Arrow. They had a little blurb about terrorist. A terrorist was implicated in such and such, and he was bringing in opium and arms, and, the whole model that they present to you is just this stupid, like the show Intelligence or any procedural cop show, is the model is of that we're the good guys. We're still the good guys, America, and we do no wrong. We do, always what's right, and we're upholding liberty. Well, I'm sorry, folks. It's long been undermined and infiltrated. This once great land of ours has been infiltrated. Check out Dr. Strangelove for an old film by Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick knew what was going on. Check out any of his films. I mean, The Shining. He knew about the Illuminati and what they were up to. And Eyes Wide Shut is a good example of Kubrick's depicting the way they do things and some of their rituals. But they are running the world. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've been studying it. I've been reading, putting the dots together, connecting the dots, and that's what you have to do. You have to connect the dots because they're not going to do it for you. But by now, from the time I started this, there's been so many more websites on the alternative websites trying to bring the truth to you. But still, after all this time, it seems like the American people are still drinking too much fluoride in the water, which is another thing, and it's here in Portland, and it was when I lived down a couple of years ago down in Florida, in the beautiful Florida Keys. They were putting fluoride in the water down there, and they're getting rid of it in many cities, but it's too slow. It's dumbing down people, and it's toxic. It's a neurotoxin, just like the chemtrails that are sprayed above us. Anyway, how about some cops getting out of control? Take a look at this short video just to remind you of what's happening here and there and that you don't hear about in the mainstream media.
This was shot from a gun camera that one of the police officers has. And when you see this man talking to them calmly, and seconds later he's dead, you realize how dangerous this militarization of police has become. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, they've all reported now on what I began warning you about 19 years ago. The federalization and the militarization of police under the Rand Corporation National Stability Police Force Plan, which is designed to turn our country into a martial law system.
If you were down at a bar or a bus stop, I have the right to kill you right now because you're trying to take me over. Don't get stupid with me.
We're not going to get stupid.
You said we were walking out of here, now you're bringing up assault and everybody's going to get hurt again? All right, don't change up your agreement. I'm going to try to walk with you.
All right.
I love folks. I'll try to harm you. Keep your word. I can keep you safe. All right? Don't worry about safety. I'm not a fucking murderer. All right? Try to harm you. Try to harm you. All right?
Do it.
Get on the ground!
Get on the ground! Get on the ground now! Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Don't make fun of me.
Put it up! Move it up!
Get your hands up!
Still got the knives in his hand? Still got the knives in his hand.
Still got his knives in his hand.
Step it up behind you. You moving?
Please don't hurt me.
His hands still armed.
Yep.
Can't move.
Get your hands out.
Get
Drop
your
the
hands
knife.
up.
Beam back. Right behind you.
Put your hands out to your side and drop the knife. Hands out to your side.
Beanbag! Beanbag!
Drop the knife.
Drop the knife!
Drop the knife.
Still got the knife in his hand? Negative effect. Still going hard on him? I can get him on him. Yeah, I don't want that knife in his head.
I'll be your hands free.
All right, he's good. Somebody step on that right hand real hard.
How do you like those guys, huh? I guess they feel like they can do anything they want anymore. And the reason you don't hear about it is, Diane Sawyer on ABC. She would never report on something like that, would she? What's his name on CBS? I don't even know. Brian Williams. They're all paid liars, paid shills for the global elites who own those media companies. They never grow tired of making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and passing along the lies to you, as this Flight 370 stink to high heaven. You know, there's a secret air base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's called Diego Garcia, which the United States apparently borrowed or leased it from Great Britain, and then they kicked the native inhabitants off of it. They made them move 1,000 miles away to a crappy, slummy island, kind of like Haiti or whatever, where there was nothing for them to do, nothing. They wouldn't let them even take their belongings. The United States just kicked off the population of this little island, Diego Garcia, and set up a base there in the Indian Ocean because it was strategic to their geopolitical machinations. So there are people that think maybe 370 landed there and something is going on. But, well, anyway, let's get on to the second half of Dane Wiggington's presentation, Geoengineering and the Collapse of Planet Earth.
So where are the climate scientists, and how can they be so completely oblivious to a raging elephant in the room? And this is where articles like this don't acknowledge that. Unprecedented storm sparks California fires. This is referring back to 2008, as I just went over. Solar flare could unleash nuclear holocaust across planet Earth, forcing hundreds of nuclear power plants into total meltdowns. This is also very important. This is relating back to the pharmaceutical cure for planet Earth. The more they spray, the more they have to spray. As they destroy the ozone layer, they destroy the Earth's natural protection. Now, if we have a large CME, a large solar flare, we may have Fukushima times 100 or 200 because solar flares can knock out grid power, no grid power, nuke plants can't cool themselves, they go into meltdown. So the more they spray, the more they, I think, feel they have to spray to provide protection. Where we once had natural protection, now we have to have toxic metal artificial protection. So this is one more way that geoengineering could end life on Earth by causing more meltdowns. Weather control and HAARP conspiracy. There's no conspiracy. HAARP exists. We know what it does. For those that aren't familiar, extremely powerful ground-based radio frequency transmitters. They don't receive, they transmit. You have a huge facility in Alaska. You have about 24 big facilities ground-based around the globe. These facilities can and do routinely manipulate the jet stream. And the jet stream configurations we see of late to create these artificial storms appear to be direct results. We have HAARP monitoring stations that show where those frequencies occur. It's the 2 + 2 = 4 equation, period. I don't know how many have seen this. This is called SBX radar. This amounts to a sea-based X-band radar, which is a sea-based HAARP facility. It doesn't even look real. It looks like something out of a science fiction movie. And this is what happens when you have unlimited funds and nothing else to do but to experiment on planet Earth. So now you have these facilities around the globe as well. This is how HAARP is affecting the global meltdown, HAARP and geoengineering. These are ocean currents. We now have warm Atlantic water being pumped into the Arctic. That's thawing methane on the sea floor. Methane's releasing. Methane goes into the atmosphere, covers the planet like a layer of glass, begins to heat things up fast. Methane over a 10-year time horizon is 100 times more powerful than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Again, all roads, so many roads leading back to geoengineering. Not to say that we don't have a problem otherwise. Not to say that human activity isn't a form of geoengineering, as I said. But geoengineering is like trying to put a fire out with a bucket of gas. It simply can't work. Jet stream configurations, this is important to look at. You see these radical swings, these radical dips. It appears to be what they're doing to cool the East Coast. They create high pressure zones like the one that's over us now, pumps the storms far north. They can cool that air as it goes through Alaska and Canada, pump it down to the eastern US and cool off half the country while the other half literally fries and dries. It's exactly the configuration we're going through right now. Methane leaking from the seafloor. This is an illustration that shows how it covers the planet. You have hydrates that leak through the seafloor up to the surface. They acidify the ocean on their way up, and then they go into the atmosphere where they start to cover the planet. This is methane release from, this is what the scientists on the front line that are willing to speak honestly. Biggest story of 2013, methane release. To give you an idea why methane is so important, there's enough methane in the reservoir that you see here in the Arctic, the Laptev Sea. There's enough methane there to extinguish life on Earth many times over, many. If this methane gets into the atmosphere, it's game over. It's that simple, it's game over. It's starting to happen now. If geoengineering doesn't stop and the planet's not allowed to respond, I think we have no chance. Global warming and the Gulf Stream. Our atmospheric pollution roadway to subsea Arctic methane-induced climate hell. Again, more stories that are not being covered by media. This is an issue that will change our collective reality quite quickly. You'll hear about this soon enough. This is methane also. You see the graph goes straight up. No secret that it's increasing rapidly. CH4 is methane. This is an important globe, paints a good picture. 2013, January 1st to 11th, on your left. 2014, on the right. You see much, much more color on the 2014 map. Methane's releasing very rapidly. To give you an idea, for about the last million years, methane was never over 700 parts per billion. About 9 months ago, it went up to 1,800. Now we're seeing spikes up to 2,350, 2,500 parts per billion. Radical escalation. I mean, unlike anything that's happened in far more than the last million years. So this is a very pertinent issue. Helping the geoengineers to sell geoengineering. When we don't understand what's happening with the climate and we go along with some headlines and we take headlines as a source of information, right now, that's what the geoengineers appear to want. Why is the U.S. government trying to control the contents of scientific journals? They want to control scientific journals because that's how they control the scientific community. That's how they create the illusion of agencies like the EPA and other such agencies that we're led to believe are there for our own protection, that we're led to believe would tell us if something's wrong. couldn't be further from the truth. Absolutely couldn't be further. So as they control universities, which they do now quite well, they control the major peer-reviewed manuals. So you can have things like this happening in our skies, completely obvious in your face things that the scientific community will not acknowledge. And when you try to corner them and acknowledge this, I was on a radio show with Simon Donner, one of the world's most recognized climate scientists, and when cornered and asked about these programs, he tried to make the case that no matter how much it looks like they're spraying, he said, I know they're not. And when I asked him how as a scientist he could possibly say that he knows there's no spraying going on, click, I'm off the air, that fast. So this is what you have. You have a completely controlled system, and that's why we can have things like this happening without any media acknowledgement, any academia acknowledgement. HAARP again. Now, HAARP, I want to go into what HAARP does in a few other scenarios. So that's another picture of HAARP. It's a very ominous and very, very dangerous installation. It's literally ripping holes in the atmosphere. Here you have a HAARP signal. That's why I showed that image again. Now, that big, bright area over the eastern U.S., guess what that is? Arctic vortex. The big headlines that we're all forced to believe that if you walked out the door, you would immediately turn into a popsicle. So, yes, there was cold temperatures, very cold, but for how long? And how historically unusual was this, and was it natural? And when you see the jet stream configuration, and you see these HAARP signals that manipulate that jet stream, there's nothing natural about it, nothing. It was designed to create some headlines. They made the most of it. Anybody here who watches Weather Channel, it's absolutely astounding. It's like watching a cast of clowns who clearly have marching orders to paint the most frigid picture on planet Earth they can possibly paint. They don't talk about the fact that days earlier, for this big cool down in the Arctic, New York shattered its all-time record high by 10 degrees, 73 degrees in New York in January. Then it plunges down to the single digits, and then a few days later it's back up to 60 degrees in rain. So these fluctuations, again, back to the term climate change that I went over before, that's why they coined that term, so people would not question these massive changes as being unnatural. Why are thousands of dead birds suddenly falling from the sky? Well, when you blast the sky with massive radio frequency signals, it tends to cause some problems. And what people don't realize, I'm sure many of you have heard the birds falling out of the sky several years ago, happened again this January. What you don't know about several years ago, it happened in 34 places around the globe. Former Bush aide John Wheeler was seen outside the Pentagon threatening to, according to witnesses, blow the whistle on these programs. He was found in a landfill 2 days later. So this is certainly the big league, and if these programs were really brought to light, it would change the complexion of what we face. Geoengineered snowstorms wreaking havoc around the globe. This is very important to remember. There is no natural weather at this point. Even small-scale geoengineering programs would have the potential to disrupt the entire system, but in fact, we're seeing global programs. So the whole system has been rendered completely unnatural. If you look closely here, you see the massive spraying trails off the coast of California, this sort of aerosolization, which can start to set up for some of these engineered events. Mount Shasta snow holds 1,200 times normal levels of aluminum due to chemtrails, geoengineering. Many of you here that are local know that. We had lab tests off the side of Mount Shasta that measured 61,000 parts per billion. Now, you'll have a lot of people from the disinformation sites say it's normal. Aluminum's in the soil, it's 8% of the Earth's crust, third most abundant element. It's normal for it to be blowing around and everything. That's absolutely false. Aluminum does not exist in the environment in free form. It is always bonded to other elements. It doesn't blow around in the snow and the rain unless it's been mined and refined and sprayed. So it should not be in our snow, and it absolutely should not be in our rain, but it is. It's also the primary ingredients in geoengineering patents, aluminum oxide. So this should be no surprise. Ice storm, unprecedented interior Alaska meteorologists say, this is only one example, but if any of you watch weather very closely, you'll see ice storms are now normal. Now this parade of winter storms that we have, almost on a conveyor, there's almost always a boundary of ice storm between the rain and the snow. And now the Weather Channel meteorologists are trying to tell us that it's normal to have a warm side and a cold side to a winter storm. Since when? One side is tornadoes and thunderstorms. You throw a rock, you're in snow. There's nothing natural about this, absolutely nothing. So the ice storms now are the boundaries between where they're trying to nucleate, and we can see the aerosol programs going on radar, where they have not cooled the air down enough for this to crystallize while it's falling. It hits the ground before it sets up. So now you have ice forming on everything, and you have ice storms now as the boundary layer between rain and snow as they're trying to nucleate these artificially engineered storms. Very theatrical names. Weather Channel now, this is part of the theater. This is part of, they've changed direction. Now they want to convince us of this horrible cold when it's anything but overall. Yes, they focus on a few areas. They hammer those areas again and again. They'll create a few snowstorms in the same place over and over while the rest of the world is going to meltdown. So this is their theatrical storm names here. Very unprecedented jet stream movements. You see configurations like that historically, completely unnatural. It's how they push and pull air masses around. Now, this is typical of what we see in this parade of winter snowstorms in the east. Very high pressure in the west pushes the jet stream up and over us. We bake and dry out. They'll push some cold air down. They'll pump air up from the Gulf. Combine the two, you'll have an ice storm layer in between, and you'll have snowflakes on the top. And this is important to understand with ice nucleation. We have patents for this. We're not guessing. We're not making this up. NASA even has a patent, artificial ice nucleation for weather modification. Ice nucleation is a very, very interesting science. It's called an endothermic reaction. When you mix, for example, barium hydroxide, we know we have barium in the mix. Barium hydroxide and ammonium can drop temperatures horrendously, up to 100 degrees in a lab beaker. What they can do with chemical nucleation is absolutely astounding. And we know these materials are in the frozen precipitation that comes down. Another unnatural jet stream, again, this is how they create these artificial snowstorms. These are unnatural configurations. But part of the way they do this, again, if they allow the moisture to flow across us, across the Pacific, that's warmer moisture. It inhibits them from doing what they're apparently trying to do back east. I'm not saying this is the only goal for these programs, but it appears to be one. This is a great example of a nucleated snowstorm. I don't know how many of you heard of this. 100,000 cattle feared dead after early South Dakota snowstorm. October 4th, last year, up to 100,000 cattle died. How did that happen? When we had temperatures that were in the 40s. How do cattle from South Dakota die with temperatures in the 40s? When you have an endothermic reaction like I just described, how do you have snow at 56 degrees? This is right off the AccuWeather site. Did the laws of physics change? No, they haven't. It's just geoengineering and weather modifications. So if you have 4 feet of snow in early October at 45 degrees, that's not going to kill cattle. But if those cattle are encased in this snow and there's an endothermic reaction and the temperature on their hide might be 20 below, that'll sure as hell kill them. So we have an event that the media almost tried to sweep under the rug. There wasn't much coverage about this. What about the weird ice boulders that wash up in Lake Michigan? This just happened for the 3rd time in as many years. This is historically unprecedented. 75-pound ice boulders floating all over the lake. How does that happen? It happens from artificial ice nucleation again. As that chemical reaction forms a nucleus, it tends to keep freezing all the way around it. So you end up with this, and the Weather Channel will explain this away. They come up with terms that try to make the unnatural seem natural. So this is a phenomenon that we've just seen again a few days ago. This is an important map because this is the map for the snowstorm I just described in South Dakota that killed 100,000 cattle. Take a good look at that map. You can't find a map like this now because I think things like this were so glaring that they try to keep this from happening. Weather Channel's changed all their graphics so they don't have maps like this. How can 100,000 cattle die in South Dakota when you have temperatures of Chicago, 85 degrees? You had, this is from the same time, you had 89 in Kansas City. How can you possibly have an event like that? How is that possible? And it shows snow right there at 44 degrees, snow at 36 degrees. They don't put these maps out now because it's pretty damn obvious and they know people are looking. Again, this is back to California, back to you and I and our families. This is about as unnatural a map as you could have. California looks like a target because it appears that it may in fact be. 3 possible scenarios here. California's a climate sacrifice zone, which means for whatever they're trying to do back east, we simply are thrown under the bus. That's one scenario. 2, California's a target, perhaps bringing the agriculture to its knees, taking water rights. There's a lot of possible angles there, right? There certainly is. They're pretty obvious. 3, and probably the most likely scenario, is both of those scenarios. So we see something that's completely unnatural, frying in the west from a high-pressure dome, while the rest of the country is cooler. Same thing. Now, this is the map for our period right now. This map covers till the 23rd. I've never seen a map like this. 30 years of looking at meteorology, I've never seen anything like this. How can you have half the country virtually frying and the other half below? How is that possible? It's not possible based on historical natural weather patterns. This should alarm people. That's 6 tiers above normal. That indicates temperatures over half the country that are 15, 20 degrees above normal. You don't hear the media talking about this much. That's a NOAA map. Now, back to the rainfall. How does that happen? Most of the country you see with above normal rainfall, another big bullseye right on California of no rain. The colors over California, that shading means increasing degrees of no rain. So here we have again, California looks like a target. Well, even Alaska has excessive rain. The rest of the country has rain. Nothing for us. Aerosolization off the coast of California. Anybody who thinks that's natural, again, needs to get therapy. I mean, that's about as unnatural as it could be, and we see this, I mean, almost constantly, aerosolization off the coast. And this disrupts the hydrological cycle. It disrupts the rain cycle, period. This illustrates again what I'm talking about. Massive high pressure, they pump the moisture completely up into the Arctic Circle where they cool it down and push it back down and cool parts of the country while other parts fry. Again, California, at minimum, a climate sacrifice zone for the experiments they're carrying on further east. New release concern is IPCC bangs the drum for geoengineering. If these guys don't know this is going on right now, they absolutely don't deserve to be called scientists. And for them to try to paint the picture that geoengineering is going to save us when after 60 years we know that it's literally pounding the nails into our collective coffins is absolutely ridiculous. This is interesting as well. Carnegie Science Global Ecology. What this is, Caldera Lab Research. Ken Caldera, one of the world's most recognized geoengineers. What a surprise. He's planning on making some money off of geoengineering. So he puts out a report paid for from Carnegie Science, which is paid for by federal money, that says geoengineering would grow more crops. Anybody in here growing more crops with geoengineering? Are your gardens doing well? We can't grow a thing. In fact, I've reverted to growing cactus because that's about all it grows right now. So here you have, again, those within the system trying to put out studies that are absolute nonsense, but they're trying to capitalize off the system. This is important too. Naomi Klein, not her, but the article. Big green groups are more damaging than climate deniers. Where are the environmentalists? Where are they? I've never been so completely disgusted at people who are part of groups. I've met with the head of Sierra Club in this region. I've passed on so much data that's gone apparently in the round file. I've met with other environmental group leaders. Where are these people? Who's funding them and why do they ignore this issue? Because everything else they're doing is a moot point compared to geoengineering. It's a moot point. None of it will matter. So where are they? I can only hope and pray that they find an ounce of honor and courage soon because the ship's going down. Here we have climate scientists, right? Is this what they look like, you know? It's about what you have, you know? It would be more comical if it wasn't so incredibly tragic, you know? This is about what we have. Well, this kind of stuff's going on in our skies and people somehow convincing themselves it's normal. Now, this is important. We're not switching to cartoon hour, but this is a Kids Illustrated film. Look closely. See the trail? This is how you condition kids to think it's all okie doke. Just put it in the cartoons and they'll think it's all normal. How insidious can this stuff be? There we go. You see the trail up top, one down low? Another one, background, 2. This is about as low as it gets for society, as far as I'm concerned. Now, how about this? NASA cloud chart for school children. NASA actually has a program now to teach kids that what we see in the sky is benign for them. So this is what NASA does now. This is what people that work for the government do. We're trying to expose these people. We're trying to put their names out there, their emails out there, because it's not okay. It's not okay because it's your job to engage in something that hideous. Should we teach them it's okay to chew glass or something else? I mean, what do we teach our kids, you know? And how can people engage in programs like this as if it's okay? It's certainly not. And this is what we face. I mean, it breaks my heart to think about the amount of kids now that are on inhalers. They can't breathe, they can't play, they can't do sports. And what about the buildup? It's not like it's just a temporary inconvenience. This stuff is building up in their systems, especially with children. Their systems are very weak, and they can't take this kind of daily onslaught. Is that what keeps a lot of us back? You know, a lot of people that they're simply afraid of being ridiculed. We have to abandon that fear and press forward, because guess what? New studies. Conspiracy theorists sane. Government dupes crazy and hostile. This is an actual psychoanalysis of those who question. Those who question the official story are clinically, exponentially more sane than those who tenaciously hold to the official story. Guess who's sane? We should think about this. No matter how much we feel ridiculed, it's not the case. Microbiologists' death toll mounts as connections to Dynacorp, Hydron, Promise software. This is to make a point. There's been a tremendous amount of microbiologists that have met an untimely demise in recent years. We know that there's a lot of biological testing going on. In the year 2000, there was approximately 40 biolabs that experimented with testing in the continental US. As of 2010, there was 400. They're doing something. And certainly the people that work there that become disillusioned and want to be out of the system, apparently that comes with consequences. I know someone in a lab that actually is funded by Monsanto at a major university. When she's talked about geoengineering, she's told me now she's been pulled into a room twice and told if you continue to talk about geoengineering, there'll be consequences. What does that mean? Weather Channel helping to hide geoengineering assault. Again, there's no chance that these guys don't know what they're doing. In fact, they went into a 5-minute apology after the big polar vortex theater that they went through. A 5-minute apology on air to try to excuse their way out of the sort of theater they put on. So, I mean, at this point, Rothschilds owns Weather Channel, Weather Central, Weather Underground. They have to control the message. The people doing the weather modification must control the message. You have Raytheon does all the weather modeling for NOAA and the National Weather Service. Raytheon up to their eyeballs in weather modification. They have to control the message. They have to put out a forecast, which is really the scheduled weather, in a way that convinces people it's natural when it's not. The Daily Sheeple. Weapons of mass destruction, mainstream media and corporate government pushing America closer to becoming an absolute police state. I think we all know we're headed that direction, yes? And when it comes down, it'll probably come down hard and fast. And the sicker we are from breathing this stuff, the less able we are to stand up. EPA cover-up, very important here. And this is something I know firsthand. I've been in one high-level EPA meeting in Sacramento at California EPA, arranged by a congressional rep, 5 top people there. And I was told to my face, in so many words, the system is rigged from bottom to top, that they are mandated to test for, I wasn't allowed to record anything there, but I was told that they're mandated to test for combustion particulates only. The rest of the sample goes out the window. Doesn't matter what's in it. They don't care what's in the rain. It can be radioactive, as some of it is now. They don't care. So that, again, the system is designed not to show this. They test for, if you're PM10 and PM2.5, the particulate matter they test for. We're talking about particulates that are exponentially smaller. They go virtually untested, virtually under the radar. So any notion that people, and you hear this excuse from people a lot, if this was going on, we'd hear about it. Not true. Let's talk about our local media. The Record Searchlight. Drought sure to bring changes. Now, this is a recent article. For 8 or 9 years, I've certainly been screaming locally that the more these programs go on, the drier it's going to get. And here we are. And still local media, in many ways, seems to be doing its best to hide what's going on. Another Searchlight article, this is one I wrote from 2004. And still to date, they have not done any stories on geoengineering, climate engineering, nothing of the sort. So how is it we all know what's going on and media won't cover it? Methane threat, underdisclosed, another article that Searchlight published that I wrote about methane. Has the Searchlight covered the methane issue that is literally an unfolding global cataclysm right now? Not a word, not a word. Shasta board to talk about jets metal dumping, chemtrails conspiracy. The man who wrote this story called me prior to it, and I said, please don't use the word chemtrails. I recognize the scientific terms, climate engineering and geoengineering. He never used either one of those terms, not one, because they don't want people to find science. They have their own agenda, and they don't seem to give a damn about what's going on. And I hope everybody in this room considers what story might come out after this evening's presentation and what sort of spin might come out after this presentation, because people there have not done justice in any way, shape, or form to this incredibly dire issue so far. So it's going to be up to us to hold them accountable, all of us. Can't be done alone. Can't go down and stand in front of the searchlight and demand that they tell the truth by yourself. It takes hundreds of people to be there, so they can't ignore us anymore. It's going to take all of us to organize to put this on the radar. If we could put it on the radar locally, it would be on the radar globally. Guarantee it. If we could break the ice here, it would cause a fracture that would run around the globe. Also from the searchlight, what's behind the dry weather? The ridiculously resilient ridge. Again, the elephant in the room, completely ignored. Completely ignored. In spite of the fact that we have metering for these facilities that put these frequencies out, that cause these phenomenon like HAARP, still goes completely ignored. Species loss, again, I want to drive this point home. We are in the 6th great mass extinction now, today. This is not theory. You can verify everything I've said here tonight. We are experiencing species extinction rate at a speed never seen short of meteor impact on planet Earth. We are in free fall right now. Does media cover this? No, they cover some little drama that they pluck out of a hat. Are we doomed? Why civilizations like ours fail? On the path we're on? Yes. Yes. If you rationally analyze data on the path we are on, we have no chance. And there are scientists now speaking out about this. Guy McPherson from University of Arizona is a professor emeritus there. I have high regard for Guy. He's a friend. And he has calculated right now with the decimation that's being inflicted on our climate, there will be no life left in the Northern Hemisphere in a very short time, perhaps even a few decades or shorter. And that doesn't mean that everything goes along fine until then. So we're talking about a very different planet. And you can find mainstream scientists that will argue this completely, but the same scientists who have lied to us again and again and again and again. Where would we start? So the bottom line is, on our current trajectory, we are headed down a dead end with no return. We need to change course. This is important to remember as well. For people who, again, this is a teaching tool that we will put out for others so they understand that there are a lot of sources of, quote, human engineering of the planet. All the decimation that humanity has caused, and we've caused plenty, are still a form of geoengineering in a sense. It's altering the dynamics of the planet. So it's important to remember this. Too many people want to put it in this box or that, as if we stop geoengineering, we could all drive Winnebagos from now on. It's not the case. I'm not saying we wouldn't be in exponentially better shape without geoengineering, because we would. The planet could respond, would compensate for a lot of the damage done. But it's important to remember that we're hurting the planet in a lot of ways. Is Fukushima an extinction level event? I'm almost near the end of this presentation, so bear with me. Yes, media is not covering Fukushima. How can that be? How can that possibly be? We have 3 reactors in Fukushima, and this is related to geoengineering. I'll weave the two together. 3 reactors in full-blown meltdown in Fukushima. Burnt through the containment vessel. They're burning into the planet right now. There's no end in sight. There's no technology to deal with this, none. This radiation is coming our way. We've gotten, on the east side of Lake Shasta, 300 counts per minute of radiation about a week ago. It's about 5 times background. It's showing up all over the West Coast. We have 15 tuna that were tested off the West Coast a year and a half ago, all of them radioactive. Why is the media not reporting on this? This should be a glaring red flag, just like the geoengineering. Anything that could make the population a little bit uncomfortable, media does their best to spin it or hide it. And this, as far as human insanity, and people say, well, this is another excuse you hear from people. Why would they do this to themselves? This can't be happening. They wouldn't do that to themselves. Well, why would they do this 2,000 times over? 2,000 nuclear bombs have been detonated on this planet, and everyone alive is contaminated from that. We all have strontium-90 in our bones from these nuclear detonations. Did these guys care when they went into the South Seas and virtually took whatever island they wanted, kicked the populations off, and set up big demonstrations of their power, like kids in a sandbox, like crazy kids in a sandbox? Did that stop them? They do whatever they want. They do whatever they want until someone says no. No. We've had enough. This should be a shining example. The nuclear detonations around the globe, and the fact that they've done it wherever they wanted, almost whenever they wanted, it's no different than geoengineering. And now, with Fukushima, because they're spraying the Eastern Pacific, and that aerosolizes the moisture, it migrates much more effectively on us. They can literally migrate that radiation anywhere they want and drop it anywhere they want. There's particles like fluoride, and we're getting fluoride in tests now. We have fluoride from tests in Norway, 60 tests with fluoride. So fluoride particulates, if those are used to migrate rain, and other particulates we feel have similar properties, if they're hit with a certain frequency, those particulates combine and coagulate, which would then cause that moisture to fall. So they can, in theory, migrate that moisture wherever they want, hit it with the right frequency, and it will fall. So in the case of the radiation, instead of raining out over the Pacific, as it would, not that that's good, but it's better than it raining on us, now it can be migrated much more effectively over us. Fukushima, climate change, near-term extinction, resignation versus surrender. Does the horizon look bleak? Yeah, it looks very bleak. Does that mean we give up? No. Does that mean we don't have any chance? No. We absolutely have a chance to radically change our direction. But a person has to resign themselves to the fact that we're not guaranteed a happy ending. None of us are. Never have been. Not at any point in time, ever. But does that mean we sit down and do nothing? And for every time that people look at an issue like this and go home and go golfing the next day and watch football and ignore this until the next time they spray, and I get a lot of people that call me like that. They'll call about once a month when there's a very bad spray day, let off a little steam, that's the last I hear for maybe another month. And I've gotten to the point where I said, don't call me anymore. I don't want to hear it. What have you done in the last month to help? It's going to take all of us. This is not an issue that's going to go away. It's not going to go away. In fact, they literally have their hands on our throat right now. They can shut off that moisture as long as they want. And I'm not speculating. We have study after study after study from places like MIT, Scientific American. I'm not making this stuff up. I challenge anybody to investigate it. When they aerosolize the atmosphere, it causes drought, period. We have the satellite photos. We know they're spraying upstream from us. It can't not be drought here, especially with the jet stream manipulations. This is a 2 + 2 = 4 equation. It's that simple. So when you have that kind of control over a population, you have them by the throat. They indeed have us by the throat. Something we all need to remember. Resource wars, geopolitics in a world of dwindling energy supplies. Resource wars are happening around the globe right now. This is what you have happening in the Middle East. It's not about democracy. It's not about freedom. It's not about civil rights. It's about resources, period. To stabilize a country, it's a lot easier to go in and take their resources, and that's what it's about, plain and simple. Right now, it takes about 1 barrel of energy, 1 barrel of hydrocarbon to get 7 out of the ground. In 1900, 1 barrel could get 100 out of the ground. So not only is there a lot less hydrocarbon, it's a lot harder to get out of the ground. It's a lot harder to process. And now there's a race for these resources at the same time the planet is melting down. So we are entering into uncharted territory from many directions. Population, I know this is a sensitive issue with many, but it needs to be considered that the planet can't support what's here right now. And those in power know this, and I would make the same argument that if anybody's going to go, that they should be first. And all this time that they have, instead of putting the truth out, instead of making people understand the true mathematical equation we face, we've been bombarded with media distraction, weapons of mass distraction, the media, WMD. People need to consider our entire figure here. And what do we face when we look at lack of resources, we look at decimation of our natural systems from geoengineering? I can't grow a garden anymore, so how am I going to feed myself? How's my family going to feed itself? Our garden doesn't grow anymore. We used to grow a 100-foot bed with no problem at all. We couldn't grow 10 foot last year. How do we feed ourselves? For those that are unfamiliar with Easter Island in the Pacific that was a paradise, 16 million unique palm trees on that island, a very unique species, a food source for the islanders. And they cut these palm trees down to roll their statues around. And one has to wonder, they literally cut every single palm tree down on the whole island. The island collapsed, their civilization collapsed, they turned to cannibalism. That's the tale of Easter Island. What were they thinking when they were down to maybe 1 million palm trees, and then maybe 100,000, and then maybe the last one? Didn't it dawn on anybody that we're going to have a problem? And we seem to be in the same boat. And so right now, again, why I focused on geoengineering exclusively for 10 years, because quite simply, if we don't stop this and we render the planet unable to support us and support our lives, we'll have nothing left to save, and we will end up like the Easter Islanders. Arctic Doomsday Vault grows a few seeds. For those that haven't heard of the Arctic Doomsday Vault, Bill Gates is involved with this one. And they have put several 100,000 seed varieties in the Arctic to save them, because they know what's coming. They absolutely know it. This is science fact. This vault exists. Anybody who doesn't know about it should look it up. They don't do this for nothing. The power structure knows what's coming. It's a lot closer than people understand. Why is the Department of Homeland Security buying so many bullets? 2.2 billion rounds, I think is the last I heard, 2.2 billion rounds of 40 caliber hollow point. How can people go on about their lives knowing what sort of preparations are being made? They're digging holes, they're making preparations. This is science fact. I mean, there's no denying that purchase. Nobody denied it. It happened. So again, we all need to pay attention to this. And the thing with geoengineering is, for those who are involved with these programs, our military brothers and sisters, of which there's great people in the military, if we could all work together, if we could bring this to light, if we could expose this issue, those people are brothers and sisters in the military who are doing things that they don't understand the ramifications of. If we could reach them, I believe they would refuse to participate. I believe that that is our chance of stopping this issue, because we need them on our side. We need them to understand what they're doing to their fellow citizens. That's where we all need to work together to bring this issue to light. This is clearly just a depiction, but I want to drive the point home. That's exactly where we're headed, and we're headed there fast. If we don't have an atmosphere that will support life, the atmosphere is as thin as a layer of paint on a basketball. It's the only thing that sustains our lives. To have this sort of experimentation going on above our heads every day, and that tiny, very, very thin, fragile layer, that is the only thing that protects us in an incredibly hostile environment, this will be the end result. It absolutely will be the end result. Will we contemplate this after it happens? It's too late then. It's absolutely too late. Every day matters at this point. I want to stress this. This is a non-linear equation. It's not like you can look backward at a graph and say it's taken us this long to reach this point, so we have that long in the future. Non-linear, exponential. Things are unfolding at an absolutely blinding pace. This is the planet with geoengineering. It cannot respond. It cannot respond. No matter how much carbon we put in the atmosphere, we put a lot. The planet has done very well with this much carbon in the past. Sea levels were much higher. That's a problem for civilization, but the planet thrived. The Pliocene epoch, 5.2 million years ago, carbon was 25% higher than today. The western U.S. wasn't a droughted out desert as we're headed for. It was very lush, because as the temperature goes up and carbon goes up, so does rain. The planet responds. But the rain can't go up now because of geoengineering. It can't. The planet can't respond, and this is in a sense what we have with the planet. So instead of more rain coming and our forests being invigorated with an acidic rain, and lots of it, they're literally being droughted out and poisoned, because the bioavailable metals literally poison trees, poison organisms. So the planet must be released from the geoengineering straitjacket that it's in. Last couple slides. Venus syndrome. This is a real scientific scenario. We are on this track, and this is the planet we'll have if we continue on this track. In fact, the data here is so dire and so applicable to where we're headed. This is a point I want to make about geoengineering. Their goal, their stated goal, is to create a higher albedo for the planet, more reflectivity, block some of the sun, keep it from heating up. Venus's albedo is 2.5 times that of Earth. That's why it's so bright. 2.5 times as reflective as Earth. Is Venus habitable? Obviously not. It's 900 degrees on the surface, but yet it has 2.5 times the reflectivity. So apparently there's a little bit more to life on the planet than putting a reflective coating of toxic metals around it. But that's about as short as the geoengineers' thinking is. And again, aside from weather weapons and everything else they're using this for, this is the track we're on if we don't change course. And that's why the geoengineering issue is so important. Just want to illustrate a road that, sometimes the road can look very long before you, but if there's any light at the end of that road, and we still have a little bit of light at the end of this road, but we don't have a lot of time. The sun's going down very quickly. I need help. I can't do this alone. I absolutely can't. I'm doing everything I can, but locally, people are needed to organize and do certain things that could put us on the radar. If we had 300 people, for example, show up in front of the Record Searchlight and demand that they cover climate engineering and that they cover a contamination issue that is beyond dispute in Shasta County, beyond dispute. There is a massive contamination issue. It appears directly related to these programs. It's not coming from China. We have CARB studies to prove that. California Resources Board, not that I have love for them, but they've proven this materials are not coming from China. But we need people to be willing to spend a certain amount of time, people to help organize others to show up at a certain place at a certain time to help us put this on the radar. Because on our path right now, if they keep the water shut off, we're going to turn our spigots on this summer, nothing's going to come out. And they can keep it shut off as long as they want. It's going to take all of us in this battle. One tool you can use, and this is the last slide. There's a filmmaker named George Barnes. He's been here before. He's a good personal friend. He's made a film called Look Up. This is probably the single best film you can use to introduce people to this subject. And if you just refine the process, it's quite easy to invite people over. This film's won 6 or 8 awards already. I'm speaking in LA in February for another film festival. I think the film will win another award. It's 45 minutes long. It's very professionally done, narrated by William Baldwin. If you have people over with a film like this and give them some data, DVDs, flyers, it's a lot more credible than running out in the street and ranting and pointing at the sky, which doesn't work too well. When you have solid data to pass on, that works. If you arm yourself with tools, and if people can organize, and we have some very good organizers here with the Roposes and other people that are in this community, this battle must be won. This battle must be won, or all is lost. It's that simple. And if we all pull together, especially in this community where a lot of groundwork's been done, a lot of groundwork, and the local officials don't want to face this, and they've done their best to shrug this issue off, and I think there should be responsibility for that. But if we all link hands and hold them accountable, and we get this on the radar in this county, it would make a difference around the globe. I'm asking for help from everybody as far as raising awareness. And if we could just bring this to the light of day. Everybody asks, what do we do? How do we stop it? Legislation, petitions. If we organized and brought this to the light of day so that those participating know what they're participating in, and everybody from every political stripe knows that they've been a lab rat and a test without their knowledge or consent, if we just got it to the light of day, you would see a shockwave around the globe from these programs. There is no greater crime in human history. I appreciate everyone coming tonight. I hope we'll all organize after this meeting. Instead of going home and writing this issue off as something we've covered, I hope people pull together and that we address this issue. Because if we don't have tomorrow. We literally won't. Our time horizon is short if we don't deal with this soon. Thank you very much.
Holy cow. I don't even know why I think I'm not going to have enough to talk about. I mean, you know, it's all up to you, really. I mean, you have the ability to go online and find out most of this stuff, and you can find anything nowadays really easy. So, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back again. Good night.
Cleaning faces in the checkout counter at the Church of Fame.